Welcome in to the Sports Objective as we have a really big show as always with us. Right now we have Bubba from China Grove. Rosenbaum, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, Dave. We're off to an excellent start. How are you?
Good. I actually am excited. The home of cheer wine is Salisbury, and Bubba's sending me some cheer
Yeah.
wine. Hopefully that's not bootleg or anything or get in trouble. But anyway, a guy that we've known for a long time, we think a lot of, is our next guest, right, Bubba?
Yeah, Dave. The Pirates are going to be in Chapel Hill tomorrow night, taking on the Tar Heels. And right now, to preview that matchup, very excited to welcome back in the longtime voice of North Carolina baseball, Dave Nathan. Dave, how are you?
Guys, I am ecstatic to be calling baseball for the first time since 2019, and even happier that we get a big-time midweek game on Tuesday against East Carolina. This will be a measuring stick game, I think, really for both programs that have big-time expectations as you get deeper into the season.
You know, Bubba and I were talking about this afternoon, getting ready for the interview with you tonight, our pre-show, if you will, this afternoon, the conference call. We're talking about how it's a shame that we can't have normal conditions because anytime the two teams get together, whichever field it's on, it's going to be pretty much a sellout, and it helps whichever the home team is, selling tickets.
Yeah, you're right about that. There's a lot of interest in Greenville and in Chapel Hill and all parts in between when these two teams get together, and just looking forward to being able to do this week and then again next week in Greenville, and we'll see how these two teams fare. And given the history of both of them, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they wouldn't meet again when you get into June possibly.
You know, Dave, we had you on, I guess, probably 5-6 weeks ago now on our D1 baseball preview for the state of North Carolina. But you know, before we dive into what the Tar Heels have done up to this point, and they're 12-6 overall, 8-4 in the ACC, and just talk about Coach Forbes taking over. We touched on that then, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on it. But you know, through the first 18 ball games, what, if anything, have you noticed is different from Mike Fox's leadership?
Well, I think the level of success has stayed pretty well on par. Carolina about a half game back in the Coastal Division right now through 12 games. And remember, we're playing 12 ACC series this year, so it's a 36-game league schedule. So we are rounding the 25% mark, and a quarter of the way through, everything seems to be the way that it's always been, where Carolina's a competitive team in the ACC. So that has stayed the same. You know, there are some subtle differences. We've noticed that Coach Forbes is a big fan of matchups, so don't be surprised in these next couple of games if you're swapping out pitchers for lefty-righty matchups as you get into the middle stages or latter stages of the game. And the same thing goes with lineups. You know, if East Carolina is going to be throwing a righty in Tyler Smith tomorrow, then, you know, expect Carolina to hit some lefties where they can, potentially with a guy like Meta Inklin at third base in place of Mac Horvath, and with Tyler Causey maybe as the DH instead of Eric Grint. So these are just some things we've kind of picked up on in the first few games of the Coach Forbes era. But to this point, everything seems to be running okay.
Have not had the opportunity to see the Tar Heels play just yet, but I know Coach Fox typically coached third when he was the head coach. And so is Coach Forbes coaching third, or how's that working?
Yeah, he sure is. He's in the third base coaching box. He's the one that makes the pitching changes. So those two things have stayed as they've been for the better part of the last 2 decades. So that's where you'll be able to find Coach Forbes tomorrow. We're hoping that he doesn't make too many visits to the mound, though.
For sure. This matchup, we were just talking about the importance of it, but looking at your schedule, there's another team this weekend, a big rivalry with Coach Avent and Raleigh, with NC State coming. And you have a huge week for as far as in-state rivals, and probably are arguably the biggest rival, I would assume, for North Carolina being NC State, or I guess Duke as well.
Well, they're all big, and you certainly tip your cap to Coach Pollard and Durham for the way that he's elevated the Duke program to make them as competitive as some of the other teams in the ACC. It's been a good series for the last several years running with Carolina and Duke, and certainly with North Carolina State a little down right now as I take a look at the standing. State sitting at 1-8 right now in the bottom of the Atlantic. That's not where anybody had expected North Carolina State. But again, given the number of games we're playing this year, there's still a lot of time to recover and to see if the law of baseball averages can play itself out and to see if State can get back in striking distance. And the same thing goes for a program like Virginia that was picked to finish second in the ACC Coastal this year. The Cavaliers are down at the bottom of the Coastal right now at 2-9, I think. So a lot of season left, and from the Carolina perspective, you hope that the Tar Heels get off to a good start and stay there. And to your point about playing North Carolina State this weekend, this starts, I think, a real pivotal stretch for Carolina in that you got East Carolina in consecutive midweek games. State's coming to town. The Tar Heels go to Tallahassee. Duke pops up on the schedule. So does Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is sitting at the top of the Coastal standings right now. I really think this next month or so will have a big say-so in how Carolina can finish, because you've got Louisville coming to Chapel Hill, Notre Dame as well on that list, and Georgia Tech. Atlanta's always been difficult regardless of sport, and then Louisville and Notre Dame are the top two teams in the Atlantic Division. So Carolina really needs to bank some victories right now to get ready for just a gauntlet of a home stretch.
Dave, one question I have as far as the UNC and the ACC is concerned, when we had Mike Rooney from the ESPN on, he was talking about the number of teams, a whole bunch of teams, as we told you, I believe last time, for the ACC getting into the tournament there in late May, I guess. And the biggest thing for me that I would be worried about is, do you worry about all the teams beating up on each other to the point of where there's a lot of, like, I guess, where you're worried about, I guess what I'm asking for UNC is, from their perspective, is you kind of want them to separate themselves from the rest of the league, right? I mean, this is a time, I guess that's what you're saying with all the games coming up. This is a chance that Carolina could really take a turn for the even better than they are now.
Yeah, absolutely. When you get into the ACC tournament, what you'd like to have is a spot already assured in the NCAA tournament, and maybe you're playing to host a regional or for a national seed or something like that. That's the hope. Hope is not a strategy, as the old saying goes. So when you get into May, you'd like to be sitting pretty, as they say, on some of those NCAA tournament boards. And again, if Carolina keeps the path that it's been on, I think that's certainly something that we can talk about. Now, the other thing that we have to talk about is that it feels like every school in this league has already been ranked at some point this season. And this is a real deep league. I don't have any idea how many teams will eventually get into the field of 64. But at this juncture, folks have either been pretty well thought of and have some ground to make up. And we mentioned North Carolina State and Virginia. And then there's some of those other sneaky teams that have jumped up into the standings, like Pittsburgh and like Notre Dame, that haven't historically been there a lot, but could certainly be in the mix this year.
Yeah, that Notre Dame ball club and program in general is one I'm really keeping a close eye on. And you can probably guess why, with Link Jarrett, former East Carolina assistant under Billy Godwin, being the head coach there. Very interested to see how the Irish do under his leadership after him doing such a tremendous job prior to Billy Godwin at UNCG.
Absolutely. And I was taking a look at some of the fielding statistics the other day before a game against Boston College. Carolina's fielding pretty well at second best in the ACC, but Notre Dame is the best defensive team in the ACC with just 3 errors so far on the season. So pitching and defense has been a pretty good recipe, and Notre Dame seems to be playing that out. It's a big reason why they had as much early season success as they've had.
Dave, I know that right now, as we're doing this show on Monday night, before the game, that anything can change with COVID, with all the protocols and everything. How many fans will be allowed tomorrow night? I know that that's a man on the street question, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you before my middle-aged brain forgets.
Yeah, hopefully it's going to be somewhere around 15% of capacity, which would set us somewhere around 500 or 600 or so fans. And as I was talking to Bubba earlier this week, just the last couple of games where there have been fans in the last few series, I guess, it's made a lot of difference from an atmosphere standpoint. It just feels like a real baseball game again, and instead of more like a practice scenario where you're just there front of a few friends and family. So it's made a difference, and I'm sure it'll make a difference for East Carolina next week in Greenville when they get back together. And you just hope that as the season wears on, some of the restrictions are relaxed and there are more folks that get a chance to see both of these teams play, because as a college athlete, you want to be seen, you want to have some good exposure. And I'm happy to say that college baseball has been picked up a lot more on TV than it has been in past years. So there's that out there, but there's really nothing that can replace the atmosphere in a ballpark with packed house and big time stakes. And we know the stakes will be big when Carolina and ECU get together on the field. You're hoping in time there might be more than just a few hundred folks that are able to see it for themselves.
Yeah, Dave, earlier today I was looking at the Tar Heels schedule and just seeing who you guys had played midweek. I know you had played Elon and also 2 games against Liberty. Will Sandy had started the Elon game and the first Liberty game, and then it was Johnny Holstaff for that most recent Liberty game last week. So will it be Will Sandy going for the Tar Heels tomorrow?
It will be Sandy. Sophomore out of Raleigh. I'll just take a quick look at my cheat sheet here. He actually faced off against East Carolina a couple years ago in 2019 in a game the Pirates won 9-5. He took a no decision in that game, but pitched well over the course of 3 innings. So he's a lefty that Carolina has started in conference games going back to his true freshman year, and he pitched well back in 2019. He was a weekend rotation guy last year before the season was cut short. And this year with a freshman by the name of Max Carlson, who's locked down that Saturday role, and then Max Alba, who was a freshman last year, and again, because of the COVID rules as a freshman again this year, he won the Sunday spot, but Sandy was in definite contention with those guys for a weekend spot. So it's a unique position that Carolina finds itself in with a player who has started a lot on the weekends, especially early on in his career, but he's been the go-to guy more times than not this year in the midweek.
And we talk about Sandy. How about with Tyler Smith? You mentioned his name. He's a guy that has been a part of the weekend rotation, and now you put him on certainly a huge game, a huge platform there in Chapel Hill tomorrow night. So you're getting a guy that's pitched a lot of baseball in Greenville for the Pirates.
Yeah, and you talk about a lot of baseball. Tyler Smith's career stretches back to 2017. So he's been around the block. He's faced Carolina a couple of times, and again, given the embarrassment of riches that ECU has, both in the field and on the mound, he finds himself in a midweek role. But this, again, doesn't have the feel of a midweek game or maybe even a conference game. This always feels like a postseason game when these two teams get together. And I guess the thing that weighs in favor of East Carolina when Smith is on the mound is that the Pirates have won all 4 of his starts, despite the fact he hasn't really figured into a decision this year. Opponents are only hitting 188 off of him, so he's done well when he's been out there on the mound, and you can see why Coach Godwin wanted to give him the ball tomorrow in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, one of those things that Tyler Smith has really battled in his career is, is going deep in ball games. It's been a struggle to get him past the 5th inning. This year, some of that had been more, early season, not wanting to get his pitch count too elevated too quick. But it will be interesting to see how long he can go tomorrow night in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, that always seems like the thing you're watching both during the midweek and then on Sunday in some of these series is how many innings can your starter get you? And you're right, he's only gone 5 1/3 in his best outing this year, at least lengthwise, against Rhode Island. His career best 7 1/3 against Wichita State, but that was back in 2018. And again, you're still trying to build things through the course of the season, and as early on as it is, maybe you're not maxing guys out for a pitch count of over 100 right now. I know that's something that Coach Forbes and Coach Gaines with Carolina have kept an eye on, and that you don't see a lot of pitch counts getting north of 90 during some of these games. So, Smith, again, he's experienced. I think this will be his 66th appearance when he takes the mound tomorrow against Carolina and his 35th start. So he might be as experienced a pitcher as Carolina faces this year. That's a lot of baseball.
Earlier on, Dave, you were throwing out some names as far as the Tar Heels lineup, who have been, some of the top bats and guys that Scott Forbes and company have really been relying on thus far earlier in the season.
It's a good question because, again, you just get back to there being so much unknown with this roster this year. But one of the pleasant surprises just continues in this program to be Angel Zarate, the starting left fielder, and probably your leadoff man tomorrow. He's been on base in 38 consecutive games, and that's a stretch that goes back to 2019. He's one of just 3 players in Carolina history going back to 1999 that's had a streak that's gone that long. So he's a good table setter for Carolina, hitting the leadoff spot, and he's got some good speed as well. Plus, he's really good in the field defensively. And for a guy that I think early on in his career might have questioned, was he able to play at this level? And I think East Carolina might have a couple of players like that as well. It's so nice to see guys grow and mature and become excellent baseball players. You know, Connor Norby is one of those guys, and Bryson Worrell out in center field are just 2 guys that have gotten better as their careers have gone on. And I'd put Zarate in that same kind of class. And it's just a lot of fun to see when they're on your side. Another new bat in the lineup this year for Carolina is Justice Thompson, who has been phenomenal, transferring from Northwest Florida State. Another kid that coming out of junior college, we're talking last year, had 2 offers. It was Louisiana Lafayette and Carolina. And the tie that got him to Carolina is a kid named Mikey Madej, who transferred from Northwest Florida State a couple of years ago, told Coach Forbes, hey, you might want to take a look at this guy. And as Coach Forbes was down on a recruiting trip in South Florida, makes a 6-hour trip up the coast to get a look at Justice Thompson. And it turns out to be a perfect match that Thompson's won the center field job. He's already made some miraculous catches. I think he's taken away about 3 different home run balls this year. So if I don't sound excited about him making another play tomorrow, it's because we've seen it time and time again. So he's really helped with Carolina, both in the field and at the plate this year. The infield is a little retooled. You've got a graduate transfer in Brett Centracchio that started his career at Davidson back in 2017 at first base. Second baseman that very well could have been drafted had it not been for the retooled draft this year, and Johnny Castagnazzi. The shortstop's Danny Soretti, the most experienced Tar Heel of the bunch. And then third base has kind of been an open book this year, where Mac Horvath, the true freshman, started. Clemente Inclenden got a little bit of a chance to step in, and all Inclenden, after going 0 for 83 in his first at bats concerning home runs, has hit 4 home runs in 4 consecutive games. So there's a good battle going on at third base right now. So there's a lot of interesting plot lines, and something tells me we're not done talking about just yet.
Yeah, Centracchio, very quickly, Dave. That's the guy I was talking to Rucker Taylor on our D1 baseball preview, the head coach at Davidson. And obviously that program had been to a super regional. And to get to that super regional, Centracchio, I'm pretty sure was part of that team that defeated the Tar Heels in that regional. But that's an interesting story with Davidson not having a graduate program, him transferring to UNC.
Yeah, trust me, Bob. You don't have to remind me that Davidson beat Carolina back in 2017 in the tournament, okay? And I definitely remember Brett Centracchio being on that team as a young whippersnapper back in those days.
Yeah, I was hoping you didn't take it that way, but just tying the two together.
Absolutely.
Hey.
I mean, college baseball is a small world, and you know what? The Tar Heels were probably happy to see a guy like Centracchio get into their program after what he did to him back in 2017.
By the way, Bubba, we're going to practice all night long for AMAC, but Alec Makaravich, right, Bubba? Where I was telling Dave her number 99 for the Pirates.
Yeah, AMAC, as Coach Godwin refers to him, Alec Makaravich, tremendous switch hitting outfielder, and he can also play infield, very versatile. And he's someone that Cliff Godwin has said that out of all the players he's coached, everywhere he's been, he's been UNC, Wilmington, Vanderbilt, LSU, et cetera, et cetera. He gets the most out of his ability than any player he's ever coached.
Yeah, you're right. Coach Godwin's got a pretty good resume when it comes to being at some big-time schools around the country, and to have a guy like AMAC in the lineup, it's made East Carolina a lot better in the field and certainly at the plate.
Certainly, getting back to the Tar Heels, we're talking about pitching. What about relief pitching, Dave? One of the things that we know that the Tar Heels have been known for pitching and helping them get to Omaha time and time again over the last handful of years when Coach Fox was there. How about relief pitching this year for the Tar Heels?
Yeah, I got to go to one of my cards right here, guys, to take a look
That's
at,
okay.
at what the bullpen's doing. So let me just hold the card up here for a second, and I can tell you that Carolina's bullpen had a 0.40 ERA in its first 7 games against James Madison, Elon, and Virginia. The ERA jumps up to close to 7 over the course of 5 other games against Virginia Tech and Liberty, with 20 walks and almost 30 innings. So kind of a Jekyll and Hyde bunch. Against Clemson, they didn't allow a run. And then against Boston College this past weekend, they were just fine in 2 of the 3 games in the series. But in the middle game, it was 3 2/3, 5 hits, 7 runs, 6 walks, and just 1 strikeout, and an ERA of almost 8.5 in that series. So,
Wow.
When they're good, they're good. And when they're not, there have been some stumbles. And it's weird that there's just so much of a gap between what they've looked like at their best and what they've been at their worst. And at this point in the season, you'd like to think that they're just going to settle into being what they are. But I think they've got a chance to be pretty good when they settle in on the folks that they trust. And that's been Joey Lancelotti and Nick Pry and Sean Rapp and Connor Olio and Caden O'Brien. Those are the most experienced ones that have been out there. And I think when you get deeper into the season and that trust issue becomes a bigger deal, those will be the ones that they rely on. But again, it's just been such an open book and all the different series they've gone into this year with kind of a mixed bag. So we'll see what happens if East Carolina can get deep into the bullpen. I know they've got the bats to do it. Carolina's got a lot of arms. It's just a matter of which group shows up.
Yeah, Dave, as far as this matchup, we talk about the pride obviously being in-state rivals between North Carolina and East Carolina. But the big picture is both of these schools have such a great reputation with baseball. It's more than just pride, right? It's more than just in-state rivals. I mean, I would guess just off the top of my head that North Carolina has a really good shot of being a regional team. It'll be a question of whether they'll host a region or not. That's what I think. The same thing for East Carolina will be, depending on how their season goes the rest of the way, will be whether they host a regional or don't host a regional. But it looks like both these schools are going to be in a regional, no doubt.
Yeah, if East Carolina is going to win 16 out of 19 repeatedly, yeah, you're going to be a national seed. And if Carolina can win 2 out of 3 every weekend in the ACC, then yeah, Carolina is probably going to be in the mix for a regional conversation and maybe even a national seed in that respect as well. So yeah, both these programs just have to keep doing what they're doing. And it just from the surface of what I've been able to see from East Carolina, there's just such a good blend of offense and defense that if you have an off day where one of them's down, the other is going to pick it up and kind of will them to victory has been the case. And for Carolina, to go back into those starting roles for the weekend, Austin Love's been fantastic on Friday nights. There have been a lot of good arms that have come through North Carolina, but what he's done in the first month and change of this season is putting him on pace to be in the conversation with some of the best to have done it here in a while. And for Carlson and Alba, a little younger, I mean, they're having a chance to write their story as well. And it's been fun to watch those two guys so far. So if the pace continues as it's been, no question about it, both of these things will be in a conversation for host sites and maybe something a little bit bigger than that.
In fact, we have our pgxgloves.com pitcher of the week coming out of relief. He needed it bad. Garrett Saylor, he pitches in relief on Saturday. He didn't allow a hit, struck out 5 and 4 shutout innings. I don't think he's available, right, Bubba, for Tuesday night? Garrett, I don't think so. But
yeah, I know he threw about on Saturday night. He threw 42 pitches, so he may be available, but it would be a shorter outing.
Yeah, but he's one, Dave, to look out for if he is available. That he had, not that he's been bad, but certainly it wasn't performances like that on Saturday and against Illinois State. So obviously Illinois State, a potential. We'll see if they're a regional team. I think they will be, but I think talent-wise, North Carolina is better than Illinois State. We'll see. Yeah,
that's why they play the game.
That's right. And as far as the big picture, with the 3 games, so you said there's 36 games. Is that right in the ACC this year?
That's the plan. If you can get them all in, there's 12 weekend series, and we are rounding the 25% mark right now for most of the schools. So you just hope that you can get them all in. And for the most part, I think things have run pretty well, and that was the case for football and even for college basketball. As things got a little fast and loose, it felt like down the stretch. Most programs, I think, still played close to 80% of their games. And even though you missed a couple of games in the ACC tournament, if you just go on a percentage basis, that was about the average in terms of getting games played during the regular season. So to miss 2 out of whatever it was, 13 or 14 games, was about right. And for baseball, we had to change a series at the beginning of the season with Kentucky, because I don't think they were able to come down and make the trip. We filled that with James Madison. Everything else is, knock on wood, gone the way that it's supposed to. So don't take anything for granted. Just be happy that we get this opportunity.
Final thing for you, Dave, from me. Earlier today, I saw that Mac Brown got an extension as well as some of his staff members. So if you're familiar with that, if you've had a chance to read up on it and enlighten our listeners and viewers about that.
I've not had much of a chance to read up on it because I've been so concerned about the Pirate baseball team coming to Chapel Hill, but I think it reaffirms a commitment that the administration has with the football program that is trending in the right direction and seems to have about as much momentum as it's had since Coach Brown was last year back in the mid to late 1990s. So you're coming off a New Year's Six bowl game. You're coming off a season where if a couple of other bounces go your way, we're maybe talking about a team that's playing for an ACC title against Clemson. But it's just such a unique year with Notre Dame being involved in the conference and everything. That didn't happen. But, you got Sam Howell back as your quarterback, and I expect there to be plenty of Heisman talk for Sam heading into to next season. And again, it just seems like a really fun time. I tell folks this all the time that, it's great to win championships, especially in football, but savor the way up, because there are not a lot of programs that are on the way up. And once you're there, it's awful hard to stay there. Carolina just feels like one of those teams that's making the journey up the mountain right now. And there should be some fun times coming up in the fall.
Yeah, that late season game against against Miami, and what Tar Heels ran for over 500 yards. That was something else.
Oh, yeah. It was just an incredible performance against a team in Miami that you thought was one of those teams that had a chance to be playing for an ACC title. And to do that on their field was amazing to see Carolina operate like that. And that's a glimpse of what that team can be capable of. And moving forward offensively, it's a fun team to watch, especially, Michael Carter and Javonte Williams are heading off to play pro football, but when you've got 2 backs going over 1,000 yards in the same season, there's no substitute for being able to run the football when you want to. And Carolina had that luxury last year. We'll see who's able to carry the load this year, because I'm guessing there's going to be some horses in the stable that didn't get a chance to play because you had 2 future pros in front of them.
No doubt about it, and that's going to be interesting to see there at Keenan Stadium with fans this year. That's going to happen. I'm very confident it will happen for the Tar Heels and all the fan bases. Before we let you go, final thoughts on as far as both the Tar Heels, what they have to do to win tomorrow night in Chapel Hill. What do the Pirates have to do to win in Chapel Hill tomorrow night?
Well, I think for East Carolina, job number one is probably keeping Carolina's offense under wraps. The Tar Heels are an average hitting team right now, only about 250. But they're the top team in the ACC in homers. They're also, I think, first in the ACC in strikeouts with 184. So it just feels like a micro look at what baseball has turned into, is a lot of strikeouts and a lot of home runs. And that's been Carolina's MO to this point. For Carolina, I think job number one is keeping the bats under wraps for East Carolina, because with guys hitting 400 plus, the averages say you're going to be getting guys on base, and the question is, can East Carolina get them in? Something else I'd also be looking for from Carolina is what they do with runners in scoring position, because that was a big bugaboo against Boston College last weekend.
It's going to be an interesting matchup. Good luck. We'll hear you tomorrow night on the call, and then, of course, it'll be next week in Greenville, so we'll have you back on next week if you'll come back.
always, guys, enjoy the conversation.
All right, Dave, have a great night. We'll listen to you tomorrow night.
All righty.
Take care. All right, and I appreciate Dave Nathan so much for coming on, the voice of the Tar Heels for a baseball team, and we'll see how that turns out. Bubba, a good friend of ours who's his team is actually in the Sweet 16, right?
Yeah, very excited to welcome back to the program Sam Razz of the Scott and Holman Pawdcast. What a thriller it was last night, Sam, with the Cougs pulling out the 63-60 victory over the Scarlet Knights.
That was a wild one, guys. I really thought there with about 4 or 5 minutes left that that was it. That was the season. I didn't give up. I still had my TV on. I was still watching the guys, but I got to be honest. It was really looking like that was it for us. And certainly feel foolish for doubting the guys, but one of those performances that I'm going to be probably remembering for the next 30 or 40 years. Just an unbelievable showing there.
Yeah, like you're saying, the Cougs were trailing by, 10 points with just over 11 minutes to play, if I recall correctly.
It was like 8 with 4 something left. Yeah, it was. Yep.
And it was really frustrating to me. So I can only imagine how it was to you, seeing the Cougs miss all those free throws. And then I remember when Quentin Grimes missed back to back. Fortunately, he got the rebound and then drained an NBA three.
Yeah, that's kind of like in a nutshell what Quentin Grimes can do. I don't think last night was typical of what he could do from the free throw line. I think one of the areas he really improved upon this year was going from being a guy who was like 60 to 70% at the line to pushing 80, and a guy who wasn't going to brick free throws in that situation. But even when he's having an off night in one aspect of this game, he's still a guy who can, on the very next play, do something where you're just like, not very many guys in college basketball can just drain a three from that deep, contested like that. It's kind of a, just a glimpse of just how good this guy is. And that's kind of been the story over the 2 years. I mean, this was a guy who was a McDonald's All-American, was the top player in the state of Texas, basically had an offer from everyone in the country, and got to Kansas, wasn't as ready for the college game as your average McDonald's All-American, but in the 2 years here has developed into as good, if not better than any player I've ever seen put on the Cougar red and white.
Sam, I was 10 years old in the national championship game when NC State beat the Cougs, and that program has such a history going back to my childhood. And I was thinking about I guess it was last week. I was just thinking about the fact that I'm glad you guys pulled out last night, because I was thinking it would be so cool to see a conference mate and the Americans win a national championship, especially one that we won this year. I mean, East Carolina beat this year, so we could say we beat the national champion. But seriously, I felt like that. I feel like you guys are under the radar. I think that a lot of people, it's kind of interesting they're not really, even though they're a mid-major, Gonzaga is not really the Cinderella team. Yes, they've never won it, but they're not the Cinderella team that they were in the past, like maybe 15, 20 years ago when we first heard about them. And I think now they are probably the lock, people would think. But I think the Cougs have a really good shot. I've said all along, I thought preseason you guys were a Final Four team. I'll stick to that. And once you get to the Final Four, man, anything can happen. It's like a whole new season.
You go to this tournament, and Oral Roberts being a big exception to that, because Oral Roberts, I think, came into the dance as the worst of all the 68 teams defensively. But you look at the teams that really last, that really make deep runs this time of year in this tournament. It's generally the teams that defend well and rebound well. And if U of H on the balance this year, they've defended and rebounded at a very, very high level. I think, and to touch on something you said, I mean, yeah, I would feel, if I was an ECU fan, I would feel pretty significant about it, because ECU didn't just win the game. I mean, ECU, I won't mince words here, beat the snot out of the Cougars. I mean, if you look at the 3 losses this year, the Tulsa loss and the Wichita State loss, they're pretty similar. They were games where the Cougar offense never really clicked, and they were games that down to the last minute or so were very tight. That wasn't the game in Greenville. I mean, if anything, I think the 9-point final margin in that one kind of flattered the Cougars. I think ECU outplayed the Cougars by a pretty serious margin in the second half in that one, and did it by just shooting the lights out of a team that to that point, I want to say I think came into that one as the number one Ken Palm defensive team in Greenville, and it promptly gave up 82 and lost by a good margin. So yeah, I think just seeing this team, once you get past that first weekend, it's kind of a weird and very exciting feeling to, look at the season and think my team is one of the last 16 standing. I mean, I haven't been a Cougar fan as long as some, but it's pushing about 15, 20 years here. And there were so many years, I've always been big into March Madness, but there were so many years where, my fandom of U of H basketball and my fandom of March Madness are two entirely separate things that never intersected. And now for the two to be together, I'll never get sick of it. And I'll never get sick of going to the NCAA tournament just because it's not an easy feat to do. And I don't want to ever be in a position where it's a ho-hum thing to me to be a part of the field of 68, because like you said, and like I think we've seen this year more than most years, anything can happen.
Yeah, Sam, as far as that East Carolina-Houston game, that's something, well, what you were saying is what I told people, just my take on the game. It was more about what East Carolina did than what Houston did not do.
Yeah, just hitting shots. I mean, I think if you had told me before the game, okay, Sam, ECU beats Houston, how do you think it happened? I would have thought, okay, it would look something like the Tulsa and Wichita State losses. The Cougars just, couldn't hit shots, and ECU, I think an ECU team that I think defended better than most of the ECU teams of the recent past, just really just got the Cougars off their game. And while I think the 73 points masked a not that great team offensive effort from the Cougars, that's not what happened. I mean, Jaden Gardner, a guy who I think has had a lot of really good games in his career, a guy who has put up just really eye-popping numbers in 3 years of college basketball, I think had one of his best games, but you also had guys like Tristan Newton. I want to say Tremont Robinson-White went like 4 for 5 from deep, or someone went 4 for 5 from deep. I mean, all the credit into the world. Those guys on that ECU team did something I don't think any team is going to do to the Cougars this year. And that's not me saying I think the Cougars are going to win the entire field of 68 here, but unless the Cougars get Gonzaga in the finals, I just don't see another team in this field shooting the Cougars lights out like the Pirates did in Greenville there a couple months ago.
And what's interesting? I think J.J. Miles had a big night, didn't he, Bubba, in that game? With my memory serves me
might
right.
have been J.J. Miles. I'm mixing him and Tremont Robinson-White up.
Yeah, I think J.J. had a solid game, but I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think Tremont Robinson-White certainly had a big game. I want to say maybe scored 20 or 25 points.
Yeah, how about the very fact of, that's the thing that Pirate fans don't understand is you guys with Houston have like a solid, rich tradition, and then you have a fabulous coach who we think a lot of, Coach Sampson. I mean, I think the world of him, being from Lumberton, like an Eastern North Carolina guy. I know he has a house.
He is going to retire to North Carolina once his coaching career is over. He's been very clear about that.
Yeah, and just a down-home kind of guy that we like a lot. But as far as Houston's concerned, you guys are known for basketball and, really football, and we'll see about Coach Hogelson there. But as far as basketball is concerned for East Carolina, I was telling Bubba earlier today when we we're getting ready for the show, I really believe Coach Dooley has the program headed in the right direction. If you look at a 7-1 start, and then after COVID, man, it was just like that really killed us. That killed the highlight of our season, obviously, is a Houston game. That was almost like upsetting Houston in the tournament. It had that kind of feel that like there's no way East Carolina is going to win the game. In that game, the show the night before the preview, I didn't see us winning the game, so I was wrong. I'm glad I was wrong on that. But one of the things that we have to do is shoot 3-pointers. We have to shoot 3-pointers to be able to. That's the name of the game now in college basketball. How do you feel with Houston going the rest of the way? We're talking about their shooting. Do you feel like they can hold up against pretty much everybody, but maybe the two teams that seem like are the best are Baylor and Gonzaga?
Yeah. I feel pretty good about it. I think the two leading guys right now, I think is the biggest reason why. Quentin Grimes down the stretch this year has gotten a lot better from deep. I think what has turned him into a legitimate pro prospect isn't just that he's a plus athlete, isn't just that he's a guy who's shown himself willing to defend at a fairly high level and under a coach that is not going to let you in the starting five if you're not willing to do the defensive work. But, you turned from a guy who could be a streaky three-point shooter into a guy who, on the balance, is a good one. And I think you kind of alluded to it earlier. He hit that deep contested three against Rutgers to kind of get the Cougars back in the game. But I really like what the Cougars have on the perimeter. I think the big wild card there, because Dejan Giroux isn't going to ever be a volume three-point shooter, and I think Kelvin Sampson would physically drag him off the court himself if he decided to jack up 9 or 10 threes on Saturday night, but that's not his role in the offense. I think the guy who's going to be the big X factor there is Marcus Sasser, and he had a pretty terrible game against Rutgers. I think accepting the fact that he had that incredible steal at the end there to get to the free throw line and ice the game, and there's no one on this team I feel better about at the line than Marcus. And there have been more than a few games this year where the Cougars torched an opponent because Marcus Sasser and Quentin Grimes and Dejan Giroux, or some combination of those three guys, was feeling it. And I think Syracuse playing that zone and kind of playing by design to set up, their opponents to take a lot of contested threes, I think it's an opportunity certainly for Quentin Grimes and Marcus Sasser. Is it an opportunity that is guaranteed to go the Cougars' way? I don't know necessarily, but in terms of how confident I feel pretty good about having those two guys, and something that was a real weak spot for this Cougar team last year, because as much as the Cougars last year were the AAC's only genuine, bona fide, locked to be in the field before the world stopped NCAA tournament team, they were not good at shooting the ball. And that was one of those remarkable things to me, that the Cougars had top 25 offense last year, were by any objective measurement terrible at shooting 2-pointers and 3-pointers. But, when you're that good at rebounding, that kind of makes up for it. And I think the Cougars have thankfully not had to rely so much on being an elite rebounding unit. They've been able to pair an elite rebounding unit with a team that is now top 100 at shooting 3-pointers.
Yeah, Sam, taking a look at that game yesterday, and obviously he's been tremendous all season long. Kelvin Sampson consistently sings his praises, and I heard his comments about him in the AAC tournaments when I was taking part in that post-game press conference. I think it was the semifinal. Excuse me, but Dejan Giroux.
He's so exciting, or what makes him such an exciting player, is he's very obviously the emotional leader of this team. And I think what you saw kind of against Rutgers at times is maybe, I'd say, perimeter defense that maybe wasn't up to Kelvin Sampson's high standard. And I think no small part of that was Dejan Giroux trying to play a game 2 games after hurting his hip and getting an injury in a hip pointer that I think is one of the more painful and hard to shake off. And I think all Cougar fans, I think myself included, certainly regarded Dejan Giroux as a tough guy, as the tip of the spear in terms of what this team does defensively, and kind of the heart and soul leader of the team. I think Kelvin Sampson said at one point when he was talking about Dejan that, they had a vote on the team of, in a battle situation, what one guy would you pick to take a tough mission and retrieve ammo? I'm butchering Kelvin's words here, but I think you guys get my drift. And to a man, everyone voted Dejan. And I think it's a kind of toughness that not every guy you recruit is going to have. That not every guy you recruit is going to come from the 7th Ward of New Orleans. Not every guy you recruit is going to have been asked to carry their first team the same way that Dejan was. But, I think I'm certainly someone who's in favor of players. If a player thinks they can make money playing professional basketball, I'm not the person saying, well, you should stay another year and, play for a scholarship and have to go to class and deal with, I think what is not necessarily an easy experience, like being a student athlete. I think, the pro life isn't a cakewalk, and the pro life certainly isn't a cakewalk if you're, playing outside of the big league. But I think Dejan is a poster boy for what you can do if you come back for that extra year. Because, his first 2 years at U of H, he flashed real brilliance. He was the AAC Sixth Man of the Year 2 seasons ago. And last year, at times, I think showed really positive stuff. But excuse me. Once he got a chance to be the leader of this team, I think he took it with both hands. And I think what we've gotten from him this year, I think, is beyond even the most optimistic projections that Dustin and I had before the season.
Yeah, you and Dave, I had to step away for a moment, but you and Dave were talking about the rebounding. And last night, Quentin Grimes, I talked about that big three that he knocked down, but he had 22 points, 9 rebounds. And then you're getting me choked up, Sam.
Sorry, guys.
But it's contagious. But taking a look at this Sweet 16 matchup, when we had David Glenn on, he's a big sports talk guy, long time, North Carolina, radio Hall of Fame, I'm pretty sure. But he does an excellent job. He writes for The Athletic right now. And he said a team to keep an eye on was the Syracuse Orange. And they've certainly proven that. He projected them to get to the Sweet 16, and here we are. So how do you see this matchup between the second-seeded Cougars and number 11 Syracuse?
So some parts of this matchup are really good for UH. Some parts are not so good. I think this won't be the first time U of H sees a zone this year. I think there were some teams at times this year they tried to counteract what the Cougars do offensively, and having a couple of above-average athletic guards like Dejan Dro and like Quentin Grimes with a zone. And obviously, you can't really compare Tulane, for example, throwing a matchup zone at you to what Syracuse does year in, year out under Boeheim. I will note that Syracuse is the 340th ranked team out of 357 in Division I at opponent offensive rebound percentage, and the Cougars are currently number 2. And anytime the Cougars face an opponent that's kind of weak on offensive rebounding or weak at preventing offensive rebounding, that's red meat. But I'd be lying if I told you I wasn't a little bit concerned at the fact that what Syracuse does defensively is, by design, kind of sets you up to take a lot of semi-contested three-pointers. And there are guys on this roster like Quentin Grimes, like Marcus Sasser, to a lesser extent, like Dejan Dro, who can heat up, who can, make an opponent pay from the perimeter. But, I could just as easily see the Cougars go 5 of 23 from deep, and Syracuse wins this by 6 or 7. And the fact that Syracuse baited the Cougars into taking a bunch of maybe borderline looks from deep, maybe does them in. And I also think the length that Syracuse throws out there every year, because you're going to have to be a taller team than average to, run that zone 100% of the time and be effective. I think, when you saw the Cougars lose to Tulsa and you lose to Wichita State, I think that played no small part in those teams having a good amount of guard length to throw at the Cougars. And I think Syracuse kind of has the same thing. I'd like to see the perimeter defense be a little more crisp on Saturday than it was last Sunday. I thought Syracuse got some decent looks, and I think if you give Buddy Boeheim and the Syracuse guards decent looks, I think you're in for a long night.
Sam, as far as the Cougs, the fan base, how are people? I know they've got to be ecstatic to be in the stating the obvious there, ecstatic to be in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I think the city of Houston more broadly. I think there's nothing. I say this as a Houstonian and a lifelong Houston sports fan. There's nothing Houstonians love more than a good bandwagon to jump on. So obviously the Cougar fan base as a whole very into this team, very, very happy with the results. I think right now, there's not a more popular team on campus or coach among what the Cougars have on campus right now than Kelvin Sampson, the Cougar men's basketball program. But you're seeing also the city of Houston in general get interested. I have friends of mine who maybe very casually follow college athletics as a whole, kind of aware that U of H was decent, texting me saying, "Wow, you guys are in the Sweet 16. That's pretty cool." And just like, yeah, man, we've been pretty good at basketball for the last several years. I'm glad you finally decided to take notice of it. But yeah, you guys, despite being a decent distance away, I mean, I don't have to tell you too much of how hasn't been the best sports year for Houston pro sports on the whole. So yeah, I think the city is pretty excited to have a team that is winning and has a just consistent culture of winning. There's nothing flash in the pan about this Cougar basketball program. I mean, once Quentin Grimes moves on after this year, once Dejan Giroux and the other two seniors who have announced they're not coming back next year, move on to the next stage of their lives. I'm not sure I expect this to be a 2 seed, but we're also, I don't think, going to be talking about a team that's going to finish 8th in the AAC next year. So, I think there's a not just excitement about the current team, but a knowledge that, wow, this is a really good program. This is a team that is going to be good for the foreseeable future, and that's obviously very exciting to a city that doesn't exactly have a heaping helping of teams that look like they're going to be good for the foreseeable future, or honestly the immediate future.
By the way, Sam, a little sidebar here for the Texan fans. I've got a new drinking game for you. Every time Houston sports radio says Deshaun Watson, you have to take a drink. What do you think?
I think a lot of people are going to get hurt from alcohol poisoning. I think you could make that one. You could make that one Jack Easterby too. The Carolinas' best gift to the Houston area the last few years, Jack Easterby, and you would get similar results.
No doubt about it. So, do you guys feel confident about being a Final Four team? Because Syracuse is a formidable opponent. I'm not trying to knock them, but I told you that I really believe that with you guys, not because we're friends of yours, not because of Houston being in AAC, but I really feel like that with Sampson, he's knocking at the door. I really feel like this really could be the year.
Yeah, I think this could definitely be a Final Four team. I have respect for Syracuse as an opponent, and I mean, March Madness, the whole deal of March Madness is that it's a tournament that has a lot of surprising results that you never can predict what's going to happen one year to the next. I still think even by that standard, this has been an especially crazy year. So, U of H getting bounced in the Sweet 16, as much as I would be sad to see the season over, it wouldn't be a result that floors me. I mean, Syracuse got through 2 really good basketball teams in San Diego State and West Virginia to get here. I mean, who's to say they can't get through this Houston team? But, I think the Rutgers result specifically encouraged me because we saw the Cougars, I would say, play our worst game on the whole since the loss to Wichita State. And to not be as crisp defensively, to have a pretty abysmal game on the whole offensively, as much as the Cougars did what they needed to do in the last 6 or 7 minutes to win, and to really get Rutgers' best shot there. Rutgers hitting shots that he didn't normally hit. I think one of their bench guys, I want to say it was Montez Mattis, had hit like 1 3-pointer in the last 6 games and promptly went 2 for 2 in the first half. I think in a lot of ways, the Cougars took Rutgers' best punch and still managed to come out on the other side as the winner. And I won't lie and say I was pretty encouraged by that. I don't think this team has 2 performances like that in them, at least not until they get, to the really creme de la creme opponents later. So kind of a non-answer. I guess I wouldn't be surprised if Syracuse won this, but I really do think this is a Houston team that is as equipped as any. And the last 2 tournament teams that Sampson had weren't that far. Like, Kentucky was a very close Sweet 16 loss in 2019. As much as it pains me to talk about, the Jordan Poole runner at the buzzer in that one, the Cougars had a really nice bracket that year. The Cougars, all they had to get through was Texas A&M to get to the Elite 8 that year. So not that this is the first team capable of making a deep run that Sampson's had, but I think this is a team uniquely equipped. I don't think this team under Sampson has had 2 guards as athletic as Giroux and Grimes leading the line, has had a front court that's as good at rebounding the basketball as this one. And I think, like you, a team definitely capable of playing here in the Final Four in April.
Not to jump ahead, but I'm going to jump ahead for Pirate fans and non-Coug fans. As far as next year is concerned, what are you guys losing this year to give us perspective on the sense of when you get this far? And I'm not saying you guys are going to lose. I just want to paint the picture for the fans that it's so hard to ask East Carolina fans about getting to the tournament. It's hard just to get to the tournament. Now it's really hard to get the Sweet 16, a huge accomplishment for any team, right? What do you guys have coming back so that if are you losing a lot? Do you get a lot back next year? What's it going to be like?
So Dejan Giroux is a 5th-year senior, even though he could theoretically come back. He's out of here, especially given the year he's had. I think he went from being a guy who, he probably could have a nice career playing Euroball to, I'm not saying he's a bona fide NBA player necessarily, but I think he's played well enough this year that he's going to be in someone's training camp come preseason next year. Quentin Grimes, even though he theoretically come back for his senior year, he is a third-year junior this year. I don't know what Quentin Grimes needs to prove at the college level anymore. He was the conference player of the year, a third-team All-American, and just really has really realized his potential as a one-time McDonald's All-American and the one-time top recruit in the state of Texas. Justin Gorham, one of the most improved players I've ever seen come to his Cougar program, went from being kind of a 9th, 10th guy in the rotation last year, a bit guy, maybe a guy who's going to play if your regular starting four is in trouble. Went from very much being an afterthought on last year's team to being one of the best rebounders I've ever seen in Cougar red and white. You lose him, you lose Bryson Gresham, Dejan Giroux's longtime teammate. They actually were a package deal out of high school, a great shot blocking big man, a guy who I think on previous Cougar teams would have played a lot bigger role, but I think a guy very underrated in terms of being a shot blocker and rebounder and just a defensive presence. So you lose those 4 guys. You obviously lost Caleb Mills early in the year when he opted out of the season and transferring to Florida State. But you bring back Marcus Sasser, who hasn't had the best month, but at times showed he was a dead-eye shooter in conference play at times, showed an ability to really take over games. I think he's the guy who can make a pretty big jump from his sophomore to his junior year, just seeing what guards have done under Kelvin Sampson. Fabian White Jr., who is starting power forward the last 2 years, is actually going to come off the bench against Syracuse. I think one of the more remarkable stories of this season, tore his ACL last May. And basically at that point, we kind of wrote it off. Like, okay, like he's got a medical redshirt this year. We'll get him back for 2021. And, he'll have a big senior year. By January, we were hearing whispers that Fabian White is coming back soon. I want to say he actually flew out to Greenville. He didn't play, obviously, but he actually worked out with the guys and was available. And just once we saw Fabian was flying with the team, it's like, okay, in a normal year, guys who were hurt in redshirt may travel with the team, obviously pending NCAA rules. But that during a COVID year, this guy's with the team. It's like, okay, they must have serious designs of him playing. And while he's obviously not in game shape because he's still 10 months off an ACL tear, he's shown things in flashes that he didn't show in his 3 years prior. So he'll be taking advantage of this year, and he'll be back next year. Tremont Mark, who had that incredible half-court bank shot against Memphis, was the Houston Player of the Year in the class of 2020, a guy who probably would have won a Texas State championship if the world hadn't shut down last March. I think he's going to play a lot bigger role. I don't know if he's ready to be like an All-American caliber player next year, but I think he could be ready to be All-Conference. And I think when Tremont Mark's career is all said and done, he'll be up there with Dejan Giroux, Quentin Grimes, Nate Hinton, Corey Davis Jr., Rob Gray, all the recent greats in this program. He's been Sampson's best high school recruit since Sampson took over here, at least straight out of high school. And I think he's going to be every bit the 4-star guy coming in. I think one of my favorite plays from the Rutgers game was when Tremont Mark went from beyond the free throw line to put back a miss by Giroux to give the Cougars the lead permanently. That was obviously a very critical play. And he's not been a guy this year ready to be, kind of the bell cow of the offense. But, I think another year in this strength and conditioning program, another year under Sampson, that Tremont Mark is going to be one of the best players in this league. I feel as confident saying that as I feel saying anything that hasn't happened yet.
Sam, as we're wrapping this up, one baseball question and then also one football question from me. Taking a look at the Cougs on the diamond, kind of a mixed bag to start the season. Here a couple weeks ago, you guys had Texas at your place. You split a pair of 1-run games, then dropped the finale. But all in all, a very competitive weekend against a very good Texas team. So what took place in was it played in Norman? But
Yes.
that series, I was just blown away. I would have never have guessed. Even if Houston got swept by Oklahoma, I would have never thought it would have been so lopsided.
Yeah, that was a very surprising result. I think I would have been happy with a 1-3 week last week because you had Texas A&M at home for a midweeker and then 3 games in Norman. And you're never going to be happy when you give up that many runs. I mean, the best effort the Cougars got was 7 runs, I want to say, in the Friday night game. But scoring 5 runs against an OU team that really hasn't pitched that well this year, that was I think the hardest thing to take for me. I mean, sometimes you face a really good offensive team and it's not your weekend, which isn't to say I don't have concerns with the Cougar pitching staff, because I have a lot of concerns outside of Rob Gasser on Friday night. There's not really an arm, maybe Derek Cherry in relief, but there's not really an arm I have a whole lot of trust in outside of Gasser and the Cougar staff at this point. And I think it's been very hot and cold with the offense. Steve Rivas and Ryan Hernandez have been at times, mashing in the 3-4 spot of the lineup, and at times they've completely disappeared. And I think you really look at the results this year, going 1-5 against OU and Texas, maybe on its face, you can feel okay about that if the games in Norman are competitive, and at least one of the losses to the school in Austin was competitive, but it's not encouraging. It's not how you want to be playing going into a conference. I think I'd be lying to you if I said I had a lot of confidence this was a tournament team right now. I mean, there's a lot of baseball left. There's a lot of time to change that, but when the offense is this hot and cold, when the pitching staff has this much trouble finding the strike zone with any consistency, and there really aren't a lot of arms you trust, I mean, that's not really a recipe for success. I was hoping, really through the Texas series, as much as that last game in the series wasn't how you wanted to end it, I thought this could be a team that had, decent pitching, and, maybe the offense, came and went. But if you have good pitching, you're at least in it. You can at least talk yourself into having a good season. But if the Cougars have this much trouble with the strike zone come American play, I don't know if I feel like this team's the top half of the conference team. But again, a lot of baseball left.
Speaking of baseball, Sam, looks like Pirates are at Houston, looking at the schedule on April the 16th, the middle of April, at Friday, Saturday, and Sunday series there in Houston. So we'd love to have you back on. I know Bubba has a football question before we let you go, but a lot of you said it right. A lot of baseball still to come for the Cougs and the Pirates.
Yep.
And I thought Bubba was going to jump in there, but
yeah, that's what I was waiting for.
Let's shift gears. I know he's going to talk about football. Talk about obviously spring practice. Help me out there. It's just started for East Carolina. What about for Houston?
They just announced it. Spring practice is running, I think, from later this month through late April, and they're going to have a couple of days where fans can go to the stadium, provided they wear masks and social distance and all that good stuff. And I think a couple of the defensive names we brought in this year from the transfer portal are pretty exciting to me. I think I'm still kind of TBD on what I think about this Cougar team as a whole. I think I have a lot of offseason still to think about it, but I'm really impressed with what they've done on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know if that's going to result in this being a team that returns to the conference tournament, but I do think the Cougars are going to be pretty good on that side of the ball. They brought in Latrell Bankston, who played a lot last year for Iowa State, actually sacked Sam Ellinger to set up the Iowa State win in Austin to end this last regular season. And Trey Williams, a guy who played a bunch for Missouri the last few years, added to a pretty good returning core of guys. A defense that I don't know if I would call it good for the balance of the 2020 season, but I thought they improved enough from what was just a really horrendous 2019 season that, I see enough trending up in that direction that I'm pretty encouraged that they were able to keep around the defensive staff, keep on defensive line coach Brian Early, who I really think is one of the best in the business at what he does. I think the questions come on the offensive side of the ball, which is kind of funny. You don't think when Dana Holgorsen takes over this team, every team's going to have some questions, but you'd figure, okay, offense won't be a question with this guy taking over. And yet the 8 games we saw last season, I mean, you saw the Cougars have their moments. I mean, absolutely running over what I think was a pretty solid Tulane team in the opener, but just looking completely helpless against Hawaii in the bowl game on Christmas Eve to end the year. And I'm one of the first people to say that you shouldn't go too crazy over bowl results, but it's not easy to take as a fan when you see that kind of regression from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and to lose someone like Marquez Stevenson, a guy who I think we all knew this was going to be his last year, COVID year or not, before he, took his talents to the next level. But it's not necessarily easy to talk yourself into, hey, this team's going to get a lot better without Marquez Stevenson, one of the most dynamic athletes that's come through this program the last 4 or 5 years. There's returning talent. There are guys I like on offense, but until we see a full season of this offensive system working effectively and taking advantage of the skill set of all the guys there, I'm not gonna predict great things until I see it. I'm not from Missouri, but this is very much a show me kind of situation.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you pretty much touched on everything that I would have asked. Or I was going to just generally speaking, going into year 3 of Dana Holgorsen, what was your take on things? So you gave a pretty good rundown right there.
One thing I want to add, this is a lot more friendly of a schedule, as much as there are things that didn't meet expectations of the last 2 years. I think it was undeniable as U of H got a pretty brutal draw in conference the last 2 years. You didn't miss UCF either of the last 2 years. You got Cincinnati both of those years as well, as Cincinnati's programs really got things kicking. You had Oklahoma in the non-conference last year, or 2 years ago now, excuse me. You had BYU, who had a great year in conference last year. So it's a schedule a lot more tailor-made for a 9-10 win season. But the flip side of that, kind of like Major Applewhite's last season in 2018, no one's going to be happy with 8-4. Barring an injury catastrophe, and the team having to limp their way through the season, no one here is going to be happy if you win 8 games against the schedule. You're not getting UCF, you're not getting Cincy, you're not really getting anyone that difficult in non-conference. So, with that comes the relief of, get Oklahoma. We don't have to get BYU, but now there's the expectation. Not just you have to win games because, hey, it's year 3, you've had your time to bring your people in, but this schedule is very, very friendly and very, very conducive to getting some wins. So there's definitely pressure on the staff right now. I'm not saying a coaching change is necessarily in the cards if things don't go badly this year. I think this might be a situation where Holgorsen gets 4 years, barring off the field or NCAA problems. But I think this is the last year to really win over a portion of the fan base. I don't think everyone is in one camp or the other. I think there's a lot of people who still believe this could be an exciting year and the staff can get turned around. But, I think if this year's a disappointing season, you might be bringing the same staff back, but you're not going to find a whole lot of people that are very enthusiastic about a 4th year of Dana Holgorsen if this year isn't a year where the Cougars are at least at or near the top of the conference in terms of contention.
And anytime you get $4 million a year and the AAC as a coach from a university, you have to know that expectations are going to be high for sure. Sam, before we let you go, by the way, I was going to tell you that I read yesterday that Katy Perry is actually going to do a Las Vegas residency at the theater at Resorts World. So we're going to have to, Bubba, what do you think? Can we go to Las Vegas next year and see Katy Perry?
We'll see. Make it happen. I was hard to say when the lights went down in the city.
No doubt about it.
I can hear y'all now. Sorry about
that.
Listeners,
I'm joking because of Sam's screen going dark. For the people who are listening to this archived on our audio only platforms.
Sorry about that, fellas.
Yeah, I was just saying about Katy Perry. I read yesterday that she's going to be at the theater at Resorts World, the new casino. Saying maybe we should come out there, kind of like The Hangover. In this case, like tonight's show, we'll lose Kyle, and we'll have to find him.
It's funny. I was living about 2.5 hours from Houston at my last place. I obviously raised in Houston, went to school in Houston, was living in the Austin area before. And it's funny. I moved about 1,000 miles further away from home, and yet I've had more people visit me here than I did in my place. I don't know. Maybe the city has something to do with it. I haven't figured it out yet. But yeah, I think actually you can't see it right now. But when it gets dark, from my porch just behind me, you can see the top of Resort World and about 9 or 10 of the casinos here, just because I'm about 3 miles west of the Strip.
All right, school me up real fast. Where is that location as far as? I love the Strip. Where is that? That's the newer end of the Strip or the older end of the Strip?
It's all. I mean, Resort World is kind of in the older. It's kind of in the older end. I mean, it's near Circus Circus. It's
Yeah. Okay. So,
but I mean, but it's also. I mean, it's kind of a mix there. I mean, in terms of the age of property, I think Sahara is not that far from there, but the Sahara has been rebuilt enough
right.
times that it's not really very similar to the old property. It's near the Strat to the big Space Needle looking thing. It's roughly on that side. I don't work over there anymore. My company moved out close to the airport, but my first couple of times coming out here, we still had the old office near the Strip, and I could literally see the Resort World construction from my office window, like 2 blocks down. So it's kind of surreal. Like you kind of live in 2 different cities. Like I live in Las Vegas. I go to the grocery store and do all the same stuff y'all do in your towns like everyone else. And then I drive to work every morning and I see like 20 of the largest casinos in the world. It's like, oh yeah, that's over there.
No doubt. Well, Sam, buddy, appreciate you very much. Before we let you go for real this time, I want you to plug your stuff, your show, and social media and the like.
Yeah, guys, we are the Scott Holman Podcast. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, basically wherever you get podcasts, you can find the Scott Holman Podcast. There, if you're curious how the Cougars got to this point, what we saw as guys who watch this team week in, week out in terms of how this team is getting there, how far we think they can go. You can listen to us. We are doing at least 1 episode per week during the tournament right now. Obviously, we're doing tournament recaps and also talking everything else going on. We are on Facebook too. You can search the Scott Holman Podcast. We are SHPAWD Cast. On Twitter, the social media platform we probably use the most. So you can find us there. You can email us shpodcast.com, shpodcast@gmail.com. You can go to our website, shpawdcast.com. My co-host usually does a segment here, but I think I hit all the platforms. As always, guys, great talking with you. Hopefully coming back to talk ECU Cougar baseball here in not too long.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we hope to have you back here in the next week or two to talk about the Cougars going to the final.
Yeah, certainly.
No doubt. Appreciate you, man. Hope you have a great night. Get some rest, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Take care, guys. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Sam. There he is, Sam Razz with the Scott Holman Podcast. And, Bubba, I know that running out of time, but we want to do an ECU sports report and plug our stuff and put this podcast to bed.
Absolutely. There's so much going on this spring. You always have a lot going on, but with the COVID-19 pandemic, even more than usual. We'll start off with men's and women's track and field. The indoor season completed back in mid-February up at Liberty. So the outdoor season is getting underway. Actually, this weekend, March 26th and 27th, that's Friday and Saturday, the Pirates will be down in Columbia taking on the Gamecocks at the Weems Baskin Invitational. So stay tuned for that. Keep tabs on how the Pirates are doing down in Columbia on the track and in the field events. And then on April 3rd, you have an all-day event. It's a lot of fun to get out and watch. And like you always hear Coach Kraft talk about, this smorgasbord is kind of a buffet, if you will. So many events going on. I don't remember exactly how many it is. I know in high school it's right around 16 events or more, and even more in college. But the Bill Carson Invitational will be taking place on April 3rd. That's a Saturday at the track and field facility right there near Clark LeClaire Stadium, and also the softball stadium. Speaking of softball, the Pirates got off to an excellent 9-2 start. Unfortunately, they have dropped 9 straight. They have played a tremendous schedule, though. They've only played 3 home games thus far at Max Joyner Stadium. And, they've faced the likes of a top 20 foe in Georgia. They've also they played at least 2 games, if not 3, against the Bulldogs. They had a 3-game series at JMU, so they've been playing some tremendous competition. Yeah. A lot of those games have been very competitive, lost a ton of close ball games. And so this is a good ball club, and hopefully they'll be able to rekindle some of that success they had in that 9-2 start as they're about to begin league play against, I think it's Wichita State. Some of their leaders thus far at the plate have been McCollum and then also Garner. Garner is the transfer from NC State, and she is playing third base, and has really swung the bat very well thus far. She's hit seven home runs and driven in, I think it's a team high 17 runs. So that's a little bit about what's been taking place in ECU softball. And then, taking a look, volleyball. Volleyball is off to, I'm trying to remember, I want to say 4-7 start. They did win their most recent match out my way, and they defeated Davidson in five games, 3-2 last night. And I was watching some of that fifth set before. I'm trying to remember. I got distracted somehow, got a phone call, and unfortunately was not able to watch us pull it out. But the Pirates did get the win in that one. And the Pirates' biggest win to date was that 3-0 win several weeks back over the North Carolina Tar Heels at Williams Coliseum. Taking a look at soccer, I think soccer is off to a 2-3-2 start. Out of their 7 games thus far, 7 matches, they've had 4, Dave. 4 of 7 go to overtime.
Wow.
So remarkable. Out of the 3 losses, I think 2 have been by 1 goal. So a very competitive product on the field for Jason Hamilton. I'm sure they'll win their share as the season goes on. Taking a look at golf, and the golf teams were actually both in action today. Give me a moment if you want to chime in. I was getting to those results. I had them screenshotted here. The women are in action down at the Pine Tree Country Club. It's an event hosted by Mercer University. So down in the greater Atlanta area, that includes number 5 Florida State. And the women through 1 round of competition, I believe, are in 6 out of 10 teams. And then the men are in action. They're actually they're hosting the ECU Intercollegiate at Brook Valley Country Club, and that's a 13-team field. And the Pirates are tied for 5th at 11 over through either 1 or 2 rounds there at Brook Valley, and that's a field that includes the likes of Coastal Carolina, Maryland, Boston College, App State, etc. And the Pirates actually they included a B team in that event to get some experience for some of their younger players and less experienced golfers. One thing on the baseball front, I have not clarified yet, but St. John's game with Army, which was supposed to be played on Tuesday, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because St. John's is coming to Greenville this weekend. But that game has been canceled, but I am not sure yet whether that is because of COVID issues with St. John's or with Army. So from the Pirates standpoint, obviously you would hope that it would be on the Army side. Obviously you don't want anybody to be missing games, but just from the standpoint of being able to not have to scramble and try to find 3 games for this weekend, that is something to keep an eye on as we move forward here in the next couple of days. So who knows? Maybe the Pirates will be playing St. John's. Maybe somebody else will be coming to Clark LeClaire, or maybe there'll be no baseball at all this weekend. We shall see. And go ahead. Did you have something to chime in with?
I was just trying to look and see if I see anything on St. John's website, if they had anything, but I haven't had a chance to read it just yet. I haven't up, but we'll keep an eye. And obviously, if any breaking news, we'll have that. Bubba does a fantastic job, and I know Kyle. We always all 3 of us try to post when we can. If we have anything, as soon as we know it, we'll post it up there. But until we know something, we're not going to speculate, because that would not be right and fair to either program. But like Bubba, like you said, hopefully it's just very fact that it's just a cancellation. I mean, well, I don't know why they would cancel the game unless it's Corona related, but that's the only thing I can think of. But hopefully it's something else. And
something else to mention, I meant to include this when I was talking women's soccer. Carson Parker, she was named the AAC's Offensive Player of the Week, so congratulations to her and Jason Hamilton's club on that honor. And on the women's lacrosse side of things, The Pirates recently split a pair of games with Old Dominion, who I believe actually is a member of the American. It's very weird. You also have Vanderbilt in Florida, obviously of the SEC and other sports, who are playing in the American for women's lacrosse. And Vanderbilt, the Pirates have Vanderbilt next. They will be at Johnson Stadium this weekend, 4 o'clock on Friday, and then also noon on Sunday. So you have a rest day built in on Saturday, but Vanderbilt will be at Johnson Stadium again, 4 o'clock on Friday and noon on Sunday. And if you're not able to get out there, the Friday game will be on ESPN Plus, and Sunday's contest will be on ECUPirates.com.
That should be fantastic. And this whole ESPN Plus stuff, man. And I want to give a shout out, Bubba. I'm glad you mentioned that. I know we're running long tonight, but the folks at our video production, all the Greg Pierce, all those great folks have ECU. I'll put them against anybody in the country. And I know I'm a huge Pirate guy, a graduate, obviously being alum, former student, obviously someone who follows and covers the Pirates. But wouldn't you put our video production against anybody in the country?
Yeah, no doubt about it. They do a tremendous job. And, here recently, we've had Jay Sunhalter on the call for baseball as well. He and Patrick Kennis. Obviously, Patrick has a ton of experience being the voice of the Durham Bulls, AAA ball club. So, but Sonny does an excellent job with baseball as well. And then you also had Chris Haymeyer, and the voice of the Campbell Camels, at least in football and men's basketball. It was nice to hear him on the call as well.
No doubt about it, and they did a great job. He did a great job this past weekend with the Pirates. We'll see how that shakes out. Good luck to the Pirates tomorrow night in Chapel Hill with the Tar Heels, and that should be a great game. And then, of course, we'll have this weekend. Hopefully, we'll find out about the St. John's series. We'll see what's up with that. And, of course, you can watch those games. And then, obviously, don't forget about Extra Innings, brought to you by our good friends at Next Level Training Center, and that'll be this coming Sunday night. So make sure that you stay tuned for all that. We've got so much along the way before even that, though, with Thursday night. I know we've got a lot of great programming ahead, right, Bubba?
Yeah, we'll have Mike Hampton, the head coach of St. John's, in our on deck segment. Our 15 to 20-minute interview with the upcoming Pirate opponent's head coach. And so we'll find out about the Red Storm and see what they have this year. And hopefully the Pirates will be taking on St. John's this weekend at Clark LeClaire. And then, like you said, I'm looking forward to Extra Innings as always on Sunday night, probably 7 o'clock, but stay tuned for that time. That broadcast will, be promoted on all of our social media. And also a shout out to some former Pirates, some recent, some from our baseball storied past, but the likes of Winfred Johnson, John Gast, Bryant Packard, Spencer Brickhouse, Davey Penny, and others for producing some liners for us. Appreciate their support of the program, and really humbled by their kind words about our broadcast and our coverage of East Carolina baseball and other things.
No doubt about it. Appreciate all that. By the way, folks, you can watch us on Facebook as we do our show Facebook Live. You can watch us obviously on our YouTube channel. Want to remind friends and our fans obviously to like and you subscribe on our YouTube channel. A lot of people are doing that. Appreciate that very much. You can follow us on Twitter at the Sports OBJ, on Instagram at the Sports Objective, and we would love for you to do that. We've got a lot of great promotions this year, a lot of great things happening. Bubba, do you have any final words before we go?
Since you brought up promotions, Dave, stay tuned, folks. Here in the next few weeks, if you recall last year, we were giving away a couple of East Carolina football season tickets. Unfortunately, we were unable to complete that giveaway because capacity was what it was last year, and nobody for UCF, and then the other 3 home games, just 3,500. So we will be giving those tickets away this year. how we'll be giving those away, I'll say it will involve our YouTube channel. The details on that will be coming here in the next few weeks.
No doubt. That's going to be a lot of fun, and we appreciate that. Looking forward to Dowdy Ficklin rocking. I'll tell you one thing, this season is going to be outstanding. I just have a good feeling about year 3 under Mike Houston. Just a lot of excitement, a lot of big games starting off with Labor Day weekend, that Thursday night game at Bank of America Stadium for sure. All right, so appreciate Dave Nathan, the play-by-play voice of the North Carolina Tar Heels baseball team, and of course Sam Razz of the great podcast, the Scott and Holman Podcast, and you can we'll wish them good luck as they take on this coming weekend, and that could be the road to the Final Four with the Cougs. We'll find out that. Until next time, we'll see you. Bubba, appreciate you very much, buddy, and good luck to them. Until next time, as always, go Pirates. Good night, everybody.
Surrounded, put your crossbones up and lean side to side. Set the tone with your pirate pride.